Good
Karen.
morning. How are you?
I'm good. And yourself?
I'm fine, Barbara. Nice to see you.
Good to see you.
We're here today,
To read a book and do an art project all about that book.
and just for you. So we're ready to go.
I'm Barbara.
I'm Karen.
Welcome.
Good morning. Today's book is Spots in a Box. This is a cover. The cover has a hole in it. See that? Lots of holes. Well, 2 holes. This is the end paper. And here's the title page. Spots in a Box by Helen Ward. Published by Templar Books. There once was a guinea fowl without any spots, which made him feel odd, 'cause the others had lots. So he wrote a short letter and sent it away. He asked for some spots. They arrived the next day in a promising package tied up with string, which he hoped would be full of just the right thing. But instead of the right kind, these spots were all wrong. A big disappointment, too tall and too long. Soon more spots arrived. Too sneezy, too small. Then spots turned out to be no spots at all. This is a funny page. Look at that. There are holes. I can see you. Spots that lit up, useful only at night. Shiny. And some that were simply too sparkly, too bright. Connect the dot spots. And splats, drips, and blots. Inky font dots and eye-topping spots. Spots meant for all sorts of other things that are spotted, like a ladybug, or a leopard, or freckles, or moles. Nothing for a guinea hen. Then a box of knot spots that got him quite knotted. And just when he thought there were no more surprises that he'd seen spots and dots in all colors and sizes, came spots that were wrong in the right sort of way. He decided to wear them the very next day. These are the right size and the right sparkle. They're just a different color. So, the best spots to choose if it's friends that you seek are the spots that you find that put a smile on your beak. The end. Spots in a box.
So, spots in a box. Sometimes I think about wanting to do an art project, and I don't really have any great ideas that are coming into my head right away. Today, in looking at our book, I was looking at all the wonderful pictures in here, the drawings and paintings, and it's a cute story. But as I was looking through the pages, I still couldn't quite come up with a cool project to do. And then I just happened to open it and saw that. That got me thinking, wow, circles with little dots inside. Kind of reminds me of the dots project, but this is spots. So I thought, I'm going to make some spots. Let's make some spots. Today, you're going to need a piece of paper. either a white piece of paper or a black piece of paper. And you'll need a pencil, and you'll need some paint. Now, some of you might have acrylic paints. Acrylic paints are kind of fancy, but they're still watercolor paints. They're really good for working on wood or metal or even ceramic, and they're super on paper too. Many artists use acrylic paints when they paint on a canvas. If you have acrylic paints, I'd recommend you use them on the black paper. They work better on that paper for this project. You could also have tempera. Sometimes acrylic comes in a bottle like this too. Tempera paints are also a water-based paint with really great colors that mix really, really well. Acrylic will often dry sort of shiny. Tempera paints, or sometimes we call them poster paints, they dry very matte, not shiny. Again, if you have tempera paint, you could paint on either the white or the black, whatever you have. If you don't have either or would prefer, you can always use watercolors. A tray of watercolors is always my go-to paint set. So that's what I'm going to start with today. You'll also need some objects that you look around and find in your home that might make good shapes to trace on the paper with your pencil. I scrounged around in the recycling bin in my home, came up with all kinds of stuff. You know, the lids of containers, the containers themselves. I think this came from an oatmeal carton. Also found a paper cup, and I looked inside my kitchen drawers and found some other round shapes that I could use to trace the round circles on my paper. So if you haven't had a chance to do that, you need to probably do that first. All right, let's start. I would use a pencil, and I recommend you use a pencil, but because we're filming, to make it easier for you to see what I'm doing, I'm going to use a marker. Show up nice and bright. I have to think about making circles all over my paper. And of course, I put my paper this way today, but you could do it this way if you'd rather. It really doesn't matter because we're doing an artwork that's an abstract. It's not a picture of something. It's all about shape and about color. Okay, I think I'll start with this one. Put it down here and trace around it. The best way to trace is to hold it down with one hand, pushing down in the middle, and then making your pencil go around. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now there's a big one. I think I only have room for one of these, so I'm going to put it over here, trace around it. Take your time. Sometimes we have to lift and lean. And again, it might be easier for you to stand up while you're doing this. You'll be higher above your paper, and your arm won't be so much in the way. Wow, that's a big shape. Maybe you have a bottle cap, something like that. I think I'll do some little bottle cap, round, smaller shapes. There, that looks pretty good. Sometimes I want to turn my head and look different ways at the paper to see if I'm doing the shapes just how I want them. And of course, there's no perfect way, is there? Nope. Because art is always right. Why is it always right? Oops, I made a little oops there. That doesn't matter. Why is art always right? Because it's doing art that's the right part of it. Sure, we end up with something later that we could enjoy and like and share with others. But it's the doing, it's the making that makes art always right. Because it feels good. It's an adventure. It's exciting. And we make magic that way. At least, that's the way I think about it. Okay, a few more, I think, on my paper here. I take my time when I do art. What do you think? Ooh, maybe this one. Let's try this one right here. Okay. So I'm varying my shapes only by size. They're all what? Yep, they're all circles. But, what do you think? There or there? I kind of like there. Let's put it there. So I have the size change from one big one in my case, a couple of mediums, a couple of littler mediums, and maybe one more up here. You can make yours any way you want. Mine are not overlapping, but yours could be if you wanted to. Remember, your art's always your art. It's your project. You decide. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. I'm going to turn it around to see what it looks like. Oh, kind of like it that way up even better. So now I'm getting ready to think about painting it. If you have acrylic paints or using tempera paints, you probably need to make a little paint palette. You just put a little dab on a empty carton top or a paper plate, something that you have that you don't have to keep, because acrylic paints often stain. It's especially important to have an underpaper or a plastic cloth on your table. And when you squeeze out the tube, you just need a little. It's kind of like toothpaste. You can always go back and get more if you need it, but it's better not to just have a huge amount. Okay, I'm going to save this one for later because I'm not going to do acrylic paints right now. I'm going to do watercolors. Now for this part of the watercolor project, we're not going to use a brush. Amazing, right? Most of the time we use brushes when we paint, but today you need to scrounge around for some other types of things. Q-tips are fabulous for this project. I also have a wooden dowel, which happens to be at the end of a blunt brush, but I'm not going to use the brush end. I'm going to use this end. Whatever you have that's round. I also happen to have some thread spools. The thread's all gone now, but they'll be perfect because they'll make a round shape. That's a really big one. I have a couple in different shapes, even tiny one. Maybe a wine cork. Anything that you can find in your home that you can use is probably something that you might want to try. All right, so first of all, I will use the brush just to put a little bit of water in each color. So I will get the brush going here, just a little bit of water in here. Oh, this brush is being a little bit difficult this morning. There we go. I think it's a new set. New sets always take a little more work, don't they, to get started. But how lucky I am to have it today. I'm just adding a little bit of water. You notice every time I rinse my brush, I give it a little bit of a dry, or most of the time, anyway. Okay, we'll start with that. I think I'm going to start with a Q-tip. Just going to get it a little bit wet and then dry it on the paper towel a little bit so it's not dripping, and dip it in the color, the paint that I want. Now what we're doing today is spots. So we have our spots on the paper. Now we're going to make spots of color inside each circle. And so we'll want to hold whatever tool we're using, whether it's a Q-tip or a thread spool, whatever. We're going to hold it kind of upright. And we're going to just press dots kind of close together inside the circle. This This is really fun to do. Oh, just make dots. When I need more paint, just dip right in, get some more, keep going. The dots can touch a little. You don't have to do this terribly slowly and carefully, but you do mostly want to keep the dots a little bit separate. So we see them as dots and not just as a solid color. When it's time to change colors, Q-tips are great because you've got two ends. Let me see. Dampen it a little bit. What color next? Orange? I think so. Orange and green always look so great together. Oh, look at that color now. A bit more. Take your time. Think about what kind of color you want, which colors you want where, and they can look like they're swirling together. I might do one circle all with one color, or I might put several colors, maybe all the colors. Again, that's up to you because it's your project. Oh, that's a good start, but I think I'll put some more orange since I've got it here, over here, in this circle. Oh, wow, something just got my arm going there, spreading right out. I think I'm going to change colors now. Put your Q-tip down there because you might be able to use it. What about this? Could I use this? I bet I could. I better dampen it a little bit. And let's see, it's always an experiment. So you can always test it on another little piece of paper, maybe on your paper towel, or maybe on something else. So if I stick it here in the blue and want to test it, I can test it over. Oh, that does look good. All right. So I can start doing the same thing. It's a little bit bigger shape. But because it's a wooden dowel, it doesn't absorb the paint the way the Q-tip does. So I have to put more paint on the end much more often. Sometimes my dot isn't a complete one. I go back over it again. But they all don't have to be absolutely perfect. In fact, it's kind of impossible to make them all exact. Sometimes I found when I was doing this project, I was discovering all kinds of interesting things. One of them was that this thread spool has a hole in it. What would that look like if we printed that? At this point, I realized I probably needed to, see, the spool is bigger than my paint tray, so I couldn't do that. So I think I'll use the brush and put the paint, let's see, red maybe this time? Yeah, let's try some red. Red's a super color. I'm going to paint the end of the see how this works. You know, art's as much experiment as it is actually making. I bet you've discovered that yourself when you try to do something and it doesn't work. Oh, yes. Now, I wonder if that's enough, maybe a little bit more. Since this is a piece of wood and it might be soaking up a little bit of paint. Yeah, that looks better. Make sure it covers. I know you probably can't see that on the camera, but let's see. We'll press that there. Oh, wow, yeah. Let's try another one. A little bit more paint this time. And again, it just takes practice. And it takes a little bit of experiment. Let's do this here. Oh, that was better. But actually, these are different. That's kind of neat. I think with the dowels, with anything that isn't absorbent, like the Q-tip or a brush, you would probably need to paint on the surface. So whatever you choose to do, the task is to fill in as much as you would like. All, some, that's up to you. I think we might take a moment, might be a good time, to stop the video and work for a while, because I think I'm going to work on mine, and we'll be back in a minute. Welcome back. I've been working on my project. Let me show you. This is the one that I had drawn with a pencil rather than the marker, which I think is nicer for what the project that I want to have when I'm finished. But it doesn't really matter. I think the black marker line around it would be nice too. While I was working, I also changed my water. You know, when the water is dark, it shows that you've cleaned your brush a lot, which is good. But it can also change then the colors that are in your paint tray. My rule of thumb is to change the water when I can't see through it anymore. And it's so easy to do with watercolors, isn't it? So, I continue today with my project, and when I was working with the Q-tips, I noticed they got a little strangely out of shape sometimes. I thought, okay, let's see what happens with that. So most of my circles, my dots, my spots turned out fine, but I had to practice a little bit turning the Q-tip in the paint so that it would be rounder than if I just left it with its little bits unfuzzing on the top. Okay. I also realized that working on the white paper, I can use black or brown. Not something that shows up well on black paper, you know. Although that would be an experiment, wouldn't it? Yeah. So, you know, you could, if you're working with white paper, use black. So I'm going to be continuing this, as you probably are, and experimenting with different shapes. Well, sizes of shapes, that's for sure, and printing them in every round circle that we have, every spot. And you know, in some ways, the spots are in a box, just like the title of the book. When I'm done with the painting part of this project, if I'm using white paper, I might think about coloring in the background somehow. Probably not with paint, because the paint may run and smear, but maybe with crayon or colored pencil, or just leaving it white. Now, I also worked on a project with the black paper, and in this case, let me change over here, put that one over there. This one I did with the acrylics on the black, and the acrylics will show up on the black. The watercolor probably wouldn't. When I was doing this project, I was having a lot of fun and thinking about the solar system, the planets. I felt in a way like I was creating different little planets up there in the dark sky. The white shows up particularly well. And again, using the acrylics, one of the things you'd want to do is spread out the paint a little bit like this, so that then when you go to dip your Q-tip, or in this case you might even be able to dip. Let's see if that works. Where should I put it? How about right there? Oh, that worked really well. As long as I spread it out. I think if I dipped it straight into the lump of paint, it would all be too thick. Maybe, I think that worked very well. Let's put one down here. I might be able to get two prints. That's great. Wow. Now I'm holding it up for you to see. You wouldn't need to hold it up. You could put it down. With a Q-tip, again, I'm going to make it a little bit wet. And then dark colors show up really well on the white, don't they? Light colors seem to show up much better on the black. So I can try this, but I think this blue will be too dark. It's shiny though, so there's an option. There's a way to think about it as being a dark spot while also being shiny. Art is always about experimenting and trying things. And I think that that's very important. And as you finish your projects today, be proud of what you do. Share it with others. Tell them a story about it. Even better, write your own story about it. What would I write about this? Well, I already had an idea, didn't I? It was about planets. I think I'll write a story about planets. Yep, that's next. Oh, and I didn't finish this one. Or maybe I did. Because maybe if it's planets, I don't see the whole planet. Maybe there's a moon blocking it. I am going to do a little bit more work on this. But remember, this project is for the artists to decide. See you again soon.